Hello and welcome to Optimistic Wellness, the real story interview series. And today I have here Max Dubinsky. And Max, he's tough to introduce because he does such awesome things, but I attempted to write a little introduction. So Max he's not a blogger who writes, but a writer who blogs. He's not a Christian who writes, but a writer who is Christian. He writes about finding faith in the darkness and keeping hope in finding the light. And I'd like to share actually 3 quotes here from Max's blog that he wrote. One of them, "It's not about reaching as many people as possible at the same time. It's about reaching them one at a time." Another quote here that I really liked, "We are afraid of death for the same reasons we are afraid to live, because we're not sure where we are going." And finally, "We would never lose our faith again if we took the time to see it in everyone else's life." And with that, Max Dubinsky, welcome.
Hey, Josh, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
No problem. All right. So we'll start the interview with jobs. Okay, so Max, what are some things you've learned from jobs like working in a meat packing plant and then managing a Starbucks in Beverly Hills?
Working in a meatpacking plant has taught me that I'll never eat sausage ever again.
Nice.
And working in a Starbucks, managing that Starbucks in Beverly Hills has taught me that I've only got a finite amount of brain space, and I just don't care that much about coffee. I'm just not meant to manage a restaurant. I'm just not meant to manage retail. I went into that job thinking that it would be easy and a great way to make some extra money, and turns out there was a lot more to managing a Starbucks than just making a schedule and enjoying coffee. So yeah, sometimes I think I'm just not one who's great at working regular jobs. I've gone through so many jobs in my life, and sometimes I just I wonder if working for other people is for me.
Understood. I understand. Also, Max, could you talk about some of the other challenges you faced and how this idea, the idea of diving deeper when facing rock bottom has, played out in your life?
I guess, I heard, this whole thing about, diving deeper came from a young guy I never met. He was 14 when he passed away from cancer, and that was his motto in life. Every time things got hard, he just, he'd sign his emails, dive deeper. It was just how he lived his life. And I heard that after his death. I had heard that. I knew his family and his mom in particular, and for some reason those words just really stuck with me. And I kept thinking in my life, every time things got hard for me, I lost so much, and I lost my apartment and my money and my car and my computer and every possession I had.
The bike,
the bike stolen, and a bike some super expensive bike that someone had lent me. And I would always think back to Nick and this guy, this young man who had cancer and was just completely ravaged by the disease, and he had so many shining moments with such a terrible disease, and never seemed to be scared. From all the videos I've watched of his life and from what I hear from his family, he was always just like, bring it on. I'm in love with God. I trust God. I know his plan for my life, and I'm just ready to dive deeper. And so anytime I've been faced with these crazy challenges, and I've been depressed, and I've been sad, and I've been sick, and I've been beat down, I continually just think all right, man, it's just time to dive deeper. It's just time to really test my faith in God and see where this is going to go. So that's just why I kind of have the motto. So it's not mine, but I'm just kind of carrying it on from Nick.
You adopted the motto. That's great.
Exactly.
That is great. So by the way, another passage I enjoyed here, switching gears a little. L.A., unique and full of diversity. Nowhere else can you find the Catholic Church, a strip club, the Scientology Center, hookers, and your local synagogue all on the same block. Could you talk about, and you're actually in LA right now, back in LA, could you talk about your experience living there and, how it shaped you as a person, Los Angeles?
I always say that, and I think I read this somewhere, that Los Angeles is just a city that doesn't like you, doesn't want you, and doesn't need you. Because everybody seems to come out here with the same dream and goal and aspiration that like they're going to make it in the movies and they're going to make it in the entertainment industry, and they want to be an actor or an actress and a writer and a director, and so many people are out here competing for the exact same thing, to get their 15 minutes of fame. Everybody wants it. They all want to be noticed, and because of that, this city just eats you alive. People come here and they either love it or they hate it. And for some reason, I loved it when I got here. I loved the energy. I was excited just to get in and be living in a big city and be here on my own. And but it's definitely it's not the gold streets and well-dressed people that the TV plays Hollywood out to be. You watch the Oscars and they make it look like it's just celebrities everywhere and constant glamour and gold, clean streets. And this city is dirty. LA is a very dirty city. It's very sexually charged. There's 80-some thousand homeless people. It's a very, very broken and very dark place. And I think anybody who comes here and has any sort of connection to God, has any sort of desire to kind of live a pure life, can really just feel the darkness in this city. People are so lost out here, and but at the same time, like, it's beautiful. There are very beautiful parts. There are people with great stories, people who've come from a lot of brokenness, who have found redemption, and I just really like the stories that people come in here and trying to shine a light in that darkness. So that's what really propelled me to come back, was just try to be that light.
And Max, how do you think people could go about finding that light in their life if they're struggling, if they're going through a really dark time?
The question we always ask ourselves a lot is why do bad things happen to good people? And I've slowly started to believe and wonder, like, why anything good happens to anyone at all. And I read that because of a quote I read in the Bible, I believe in Ecclesiastes, and in there, the author of that book talks about how that there's not a righteous man who walks the earth. There's not anyone good among us. And because we're all sinners, we all are fallen, we all mess up, we live in an evil, fallen world. And I kind of have been forced to ask myself, like, man, why does anything good happen to anybody at all? So maybe in that light, it's not a negative thing, but in that light, maybe we are all a lot more fortunate and a lot more blessed than we think we are, and then we realize we are. And I met a guy on the road. His name was Lenny, I believe, and I met him in Savannah, Georgia. And he was a homeless man, and he willingly chose to be homeless, to live amongst the homeless, to help them, to be a spiritual guide to them, and to take care of them, and to encourage them to not be homeless. And I asked him why he did that. Like, I mean, that's a terrible situation to put yourself in. I can't imagine living that way, willingly just living on the streets and building those relationships. And that takes a special man and a special heart to do that. And he told me he gets by through his days because of the little things, and some of his little things are graphic, of just, the way he gets by and where he goes to the bathroom, and just the fact that, he doesn't have to worry about rent, he doesn't have to worry about bills, and like, those are his victories, throughout the day. And you would think that life would be infinitely harder living on the streets, but he had such a peace about it, and was like, I don't worry about where I'm going to find my rent. I don't worry about my car bill. I don't worry about all these things that you guys do, when you're living your life. And I focus all that energy where I would be worrying on helping these homeless men and women out that I encounter each and every day. And he finds that light within his struggle. He finds that hope within this darkness that he planted himself in. So I always took that with me too, was just constantly looking at the little things in my life and being like, man, that's a small victory. And like, I know that's kind of cliche and cheesy, but man, there's a lot of truth in that.
Those phrases that we think are all cliche and cheesy, I love those metaphors. I guess there's a reason. Like, I got a thing on my wall that says, "Be the change you wish to see in the world" by Gandhi. And that quote is so cliche nowadays because it was true.
Right.
All right, Max. So could you talk about also, on that note, the guy you mentioned, Lenny? could you talk about your tendency? I noticed that you have a tendency reading your blog to run into awesome people, like such as Calvin. Like
Right.
that was really
And
really cool. Could you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, I never sought out these people at first. I just ran into them. I just saw them, and I think my heart has always really hurt and been broken for homeless people, for those who are just less fortunate, just really down and out. Um, and so slowly, as just living out in LA, I just day after day just got more and more convicted about walking past them, thinking that I've got money in my pocket, I'm going to go home and eat 3 meals, I've got a shower, I've got a bed, I've got all of these things, and I would just walk past those people and just wonder who they were and what their story was and why they didn't have what I had. And I started really being convicted by the idea of like my abundance is someone else's necessity. What can I afford to kind of give away? And those people at first kind of started talking to me. And Calvin is a great example of that. I just ran into him and, didn't want to speak with him and knew he was going to ask me for money. So I just gave him whatever was in my pocket. And he was super blessed by that and was really taken back, didn't expect it to happen, and just started giving me praise and started telling me how thankful he was. And that just led to our exchange of names and led to a conversation. I never saw that guy again after that day, and I never see any of these guys again. And I've gone looking for them at certain points, and I just never really run into any of them. And now I find myself seeking them out because I've heard so many stories of these homeless men who they're often just looking for someone to talk to them. They're often just looking to share some of their story. And so now when I do see these people, I often will try to offer them a meal, just give them $10 and just ask them how their day is or what led them there. Is there anything I can do for them? And man, I have found better stories from homeless people than and stories of faith and stories of redemption from those living on the streets than I have ever found in anyone who's, living in a comfortable apartment or living in a home. It's awesome. I love it. I wish that I could somehow compile all their stories and publish them in a book. It's really, really
knowing you, Max. I think you would do that. You would definitely do that.
Well, there's a guy. His name's Jeff Goins. He's a writer.
Yes.
If you know Jeff Goins,
yes,
and
I do.
He's got a book that really inspired me. I think it's called Dirty Redemption, and it's only like 40 pages, and he let me read it, and it's 10 short stories, all of his encounters with homeless people in other countries, in America, and just amazing stories of faith and God performing miracles, and really, really encouraging. And it just made me even more want to get out there in the world and meet these people that are on the streets who have a story to tell.
Thanks for the lead, man. I'm gonna ask him about that.
Absolutely.
So, by the way, there was also one more thing that I wanted to ask you about Calvin. He was kind of magical, wasn't he? He called you Mad Max.
He did call me Mad Max. That was the first thing he said. When we met, I told him my name was Max, and he said, "Mad Max, you're mad, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah, if you only knew, my friend.
Yeah, well, that serendipity is just kind of
Right.
scary, because, that was your, you were named after, were you named after Mad Max?
I was. My mom was watching Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, one of Mel Gibson's first movies. She was 9 months pregnant with me, and my parents were ready to sign on the dotted line to name me John Elton Dubinsky. And thank God for Mel Gibson and Beyond Thunderdome, because had that movie never been made, you'd be looking at Make It Jed today and not. So, glad we stopped that from happening.
I like the ring, Make It Mad.
Yeah,
Mad.
Make It Jed just doesn't have the same.
Yeah, Make It Jed. So, Max, in your own words after this, on March 1st, 2011, you left Los Angeles, California, homeless and nearly broke, to drive across America for 30 days in search of faith. The trip lasted 7 months.
Yeah.
Could you talk more about your motivation for this trip and how this giant road trip just impacted your life?
Yeah, my motivation came from a question that someone had asked me in a Bible study that I was kind of attending at the time, and they asked why we're reluctant to fear God. And I sat there knowing that I didn't fear God, and knowing that I didn't fear God because I didn't know God. I only knew of this God and of this Jesus that existed inside of the church, inside of the four walls on a Sunday. I only knew of God on Sundays. I didn't know him anywhere else, and I didn't know him in any other way. And I wasn't happy about that. I didn't like it. I thought there had to be more. I kept reading about this God in the Bible, you know, who stepped up and who challenged guys like Isaiah and Job, and you know, this Jesus who quotes things in Matthew about like not coming to bring peace, but coming to bring a sword instead. And I thought, like, man, that's kind of cool. That's not what I'm being taught right now. Like, if this is what God is like, and this is what Jesus is like, you know, I think I've missed something. And so I one thing kind of led to another about getting me on the road. But I had this desire that was like, there's got to be more than just church on Sunday. There's got to be more than just a Bible study on Wednesdays. There's got to be more than just volunteering, you know, on Saturday nights for my church. Like, there's got to be something more. And I didn't know what that more was, but I wanted to seek it out. I wanted to find it, and I wanted to have an encounter like these men in the Bible and these women in the Bible were having with their Savior, with God. And I wasn't having that. And I thought, like, wow, how unfortunate is that going to be if we can't have those encounters, you know, anymore? Like, why are those encounters only in the Bible, and why does anyone talk about having them today? And so that's kind of what I set out to do. I wanted to find faith. I wanted to find God in the street rather than in the church. And it took way more than 30 days. And I think I knew within the first week of hitting the road that it was going to be a lot longer than 30 days, because I would stop in a town and I would have amazing conversations with people, and families would take me in, and I would want to. You can't really get to know someone just over dinner. I realized it was living in their homes and being with people for a week that I really learned who they were and heard their faith stories and heard their encounters with God and got to visit their churches and just see how they lived their life. And so I think I knew within 7 days that I was going to be on the road a lot longer than 30 days. So that's what propelled the trip, and that's what made me set out to do what I did.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So also, Max, a phrase that I see across your blog is the truth will wreck this place. This is actually more of a question of curiosity on my part. What do you mean specifically by wreck? Like, why will it wreck this place? I'm wondering.
You know, I always, in my head, visualize like shattered glass. I always realize a mess. Our lives are very messy. Our lives are very, very messy, all of us, you know, and I think they get messy because of lies, and we often lie to ourselves to make things kind of more neat and compact, and we blind ourselves from the truth a lot of the times. I mean, I think Christians and non-Christians alike are great at living in their own little world and not seeing what's going on around them. You know, people, you know, whether it's people dying or disease or homelessness, affairs and infidelity and pornography and like all these things that are just circulating through our lives. I feel like we try to put blinders on to it. And we also and specifically within, I think, the church, there's a level of perfection that I think both Christians and people who are not attending the church kind of see and feel and expect that they have to be and uphold. To be a member of a church, to be within Christianity, you know, there's a lot of rules and regulations that I think we've really messed up and missed the point of what Christianity was about at the end of the day, which is love. You know, I mean, it's again and again in the Bible, Jesus says, like, people will know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. Like, first and foremost, like, it is love and mercy. That is what I'm asking of you. Like, the rules and regulations, just like, yes, there's a place for them, but we have given them more weight than love. And so that saying came in this idea when I stepped forward. I was serving and volunteering and really, really plugged into a church. And I had gotten sober from using pornography and from drinking, and I was doing those things daily, in and out. And I started up again, after like 14 months of being sober. And I had this blog I was writing at the time, so I was kind of the spokesperson that I didn't want to be at this church for like this guy who overcame his addiction to pornography, and I was miserable. I hated the way people saw me, that I was like this guy who did the impossible, and no one else seemed to be really getting sober, and no one else seemed to be sharing their story of their struggle with pornography, and I didn't know what to do when I fell back in and took a drink, and I didn't know how to tell anyone. And I decided to tell everyone in a blog. In my blog post, I wrote my like 5th or 6th blog post on Make It Mad. It's called "The Truth Will Wreck This Place." And in that post, I confessed that, like, man, I've screwed up. You know, after 14 months of being sober, like I'm a mess. And the idea is that, like, that's the truth. Like, the truth is that I screwed up, and I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to fix it. But it is not anyone's responsibility. Like, on my own, they can think whatever they want to think. They can let that destroy whatever it's going to destroy. It's not my responsibility to clean that mess up for them. You know, the truth, and that truth goes with anything. The truth of hearing the gospel in your life. The the truth of pornography. The truth of addiction. Like, truth will wreck people's lives, and it's our responsibility to share truth and to live in truth. But it is not our responsibility to clean up the mess that truth creates. And so that's where that came from. I don't know if that really hits your answer, but that's the story behind The Truth Will Wreck This Place, and just where that statement comes from. That it's just my reminder to keep myself honest, in that I am not responsible for cleaning up the damage that the truth causes.
That was a really powerful answer. I was just in like a trance state listening to you. Just as brilliant in speech as in writing, Max.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
So concluding question.
Yeah.
I have here your short story collection. Brilliant, by the way. I recommend it to everyone watching this. We Can't Go Home Again. It does take on a very dark tone in the stories.
Yeah.
However, there's something hopeful in the darkness. Actually, the last line of the final story is "You're going to be okay." It's the final line of the book. Could you talk about this, light, dark contrast in your writing, and how people can, maybe relate to this?
Right.
Light.
I think the biggest thing that I get hit with "We Can't Go Home Again" is why is it so dark? Why is it tragic? And but I think at the end of the day, light shines brightest in the darkness, and that's why I wrote such tragic characters, and that's why I wrote people who were struggling with sex addiction, with the death of their loved ones, with broken relationships, because I wanted to find the greatest redemption in those stories, in those situations. I love the idea of returning home to face yourself, to ask for atonement from your sins, to start over, to find redemption. And these people, they commit horrible atrocities against others and against themselves, and they're very burdened by what they have done. Even from abortion and paying for someone's abortion, to being responsible for the death of your younger brother. Like, these men and women in these stories are just weighed down by decisions that people make and mistakes that people make day in and day out, that I think we give a lot of weight to, thinking like that person is terrible, that person is unforgivable, that person has done something awful. And more so, we often will say that about ourselves, that like, I paid for this woman's abortion, like my brother died while I was watching him. Those things, like, we then believe in ourselves that we are unforgivable, that we are terrible people, and we label ourselves. And I wanted to shine a light on that. I wanted to say, like, man, even these people in these absolutely atrocious situations have found forgiveness, have found hope, have found the start of redemption, have seen some of the light. And I think that because those stories are so dark, that when that moment happens, man, it hits you hard. And that was the point. I wanted to write about people in the darkest place possible, so that when they were forgiven, that it
That's great, Max. Thank you so much. By the way, where can we find out more about you? Where can we contact you?
And you can email me at max@makeitmad.com. I try to respond to every email that I get. I'm not quick at it, but I definitely do respond to every one of my emails. And you can go visit makeitmad.com and search on Amazon for We Can't Go Home Again. And then starting in March, stay posted. I've got a new writing project coming out on March 21st. A new online thing, a new wouldn't call it a blog, but it's definitely going to be a different writing experience that's going to be coming out on March 21st. So you can keep your eyes open for more on that.
So looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Max Dubinsky, thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome, as
Absolutely.
always.
Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate you having me here. It's been great to meet you and great to share some of my story.
Absolutely. OptimisticWellness.com, the Real Story interview series. Max Andrew Dubinsky. Optimism is the only way.